Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock, Drogheda. Today is remembered in many countries of the world as Remembrance Day or Armistice Day. Basically the day when people remember those who died fighting in wars around the world, particularly the First and Second World Wars, but other wars as well. Now, it's always a little bit complicated for us here in Ireland because it's seen sometimes, as an event that's to do with Britain and the British Army, and there's our struggle for independence from Britain. But of course, many Irish soldiers died in those conflicts as well, and it's right that they should be remembered. The reason why it's celebrated on the 11th of November is because the armistice that ended the fighting in the First World War took place it came into force at 11 a.m. on the 11th of November in 1918. It was the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. What happened was, in the days leading up to that, the war was going badly for Germany. Their resources were running out. Morale among the troops was really low, and at home as well. There were mutinies taking place, and there was a great fear that just as there had been the Russian Revolution a year before, that Germany would tip over into full revolution and become a communist country. And so eventually the German emperor, the Kaiser, he resigned and left for Holland, and the German generals and leaders met with the Allies near Paris and agreed that the fighting would stop. The Germans agreed to meet the Allies' demands for a peace agreement, and that the fighting would stop on the 11th day, or the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 2018. And as the clock was ticking down, the final hours and then the final few minutes of World War I, the war that they thought would be the war to end all wars, even though that it didn't work out like that. There's been wars taking place somewhere in the world ever since. But in the very last minute of the war, there was an American soldier called Henry Gunter. He was from Baltimore, Maryland. He had been drafted into the U.S. Army. He was of German descent, as his name Gunter might imply. And as such, he'd been subjected to a bit of bullying and discrimination by people who thought he was a German sympathizer. He had actually written a letter to a friend back in America saying how dreadful things were fighting on the front line in the trenches, and saying if you can avoid coming here, don't come here. And again, that was picked up on by the censors. He was accused of being a German sympathizer. He was a sergeant and was basically stripped of his rank and moved down to be a private, and everyone was starting to pick on him and accuse him of being a German sympathizer. His own fiancée dumped him at that time, and he was just realizing that he was probably going to go home from the war to be a figure of shame and derision. And so 1 minute before the armistice took effect, he was with his unit outside a German village, or a French village. There was this German machine post just outside the village, and he suddenly jumped to his feet and began charging towards that German machine post. His friends are shouting at him, get down, the war's going to end in a minute, you don't have to do this. And even the German soldiers in the machine post, they didn't want to shoot him. They were waving at him and saying, get down, you don't have to do this. But Henry Gunter kept charging towards them. He fired his rifle at them, and then to protect their lives they responded. They opened up the machine guns, and he fell to the ground dead. And witnesses said that at the moment his body hit the ground, the sounds of the shells bursting and the artillery that had been a constant sound for years stopped, and silence fell. Henry Gunter is supposed to be the last soldier that was killed in the First World War. Maybe he wanted to redeem his reputation. Well, he was actually treated as a hero. He was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. He didn't want to go home in shame, and he was prepared to lose his life, if necessary, to wipe out the shame that had become attached to him. Shame is a powerful thing. You know, Jesus did not just come to set us free from our sin. He did not just come to save us from hell, but he came to set us free from our shame as well. For Henry Gunter, his shame was such that he would rather die than go home carrying the shame that had become attached to him. Thank God that we don't need to die to remove our shame, because Jesus died to remove our shame. Jesus died on the cross. He carried our sin and our shame, and we don't need to be ashamed anymore. And I would just say to you as a Christian today, if you are a child of God, don't carry your shame. Bring it to Jesus. He forgives, he restores, and he removes our shame in Jesus' name. God bless you today. Join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.